Welcome back to another episode of Simple Robotics, the podcast, a podcast exploring the animation industry one episode at a time. I'm your host, Monique, and you can find me on all social media platforms at Simple Robotics, SIMPLYROBOTIX. I don't know why I really sang that, but I did. So if you couldn't tell by the title, this is going to be a Black History Month type of themed whatever episode. I originally started... Well, I didn't start it. I watched a whole nother film and I was doing my preparation to record. And then I was like, it's the first week of Black History Month. You cannot not talk about like Blackness in some capacity. So I said, I'll put that on the back burner. I'll release that episode like next month and I'll do something else instead. And the something else that I've decided to do is just to make the pivot to highlight some, acclaimed, conversation-worthy short films that were either directed or produced or written or some capacity by Black people. I'll get more deeper into that specifically. So for starters, I have this op doc from the New York Times called What It Means to Be Police in America. And it was directed, I think it was written and directed by Laurence. Op docs is a form of short opinionated docuseries or documentaries, by independent filmmakers, which is platformed on the New York Times website. So I was sent this film towards the end of 2020 and it was released in the summer of 2020, around the time where all those Black Lives Matters protests and awareness and things like that were happening. And I wonder if, it's just so unfortunate to a certain extent how relevant police brutality and injustice is, and that I don't know, this short film wasn't made with the intention to be released with the Black Lives Matter movement. I don't think so, because I know about the time it takes to make an animated short and what have you. I think it really was they wanted to tell a story in a certain capacity in this medium. And it just happened to sync with what was happening in the media, what was happening just of that time. So the short film is called, I was seeing two titles, which was a little confusing to me because it says What It Means to Be Police in America, but I was also seeing the torture letters. And as always, I have the link to the short films. You can see two of these short films are going to be on Netflix. The rest of them are on YouTube. So as I was saying, on YouTube or on the New York Times, they kind of flip between calling it the torture letters and what it means to be policed in brutality. So I'm going to read this. Bear with me. The torture letters aims to shed light on an unacceptable tolerance of police misconduct in the United States. In an accompanying essay, director Dr. Laurence writes, I made the film above to explain exactly what it means to be police in America today. It moves from my own experiences with racial profiling as a teenager to the horrific history of police torture in Chicago. There's a bit more to it that he wrote, and just some of the recent unfortunate police murders of Black people and how that just further impacted him to move forward with creating this film. So the reason why I thought it was worth noting is, for one, the subject matter. 2, a Black person created it. 3, it's 2D animated. And we know, despite, as I always say, me having studied or being trained as a 3D animator, for my career experience to be in 3D animation and the films that I've worked on, I still have an affinity for 2D animation. I don't think that'll ever go away. So I love seeing 2D animation where it's kind of raw. This short film had a lot of morphing. So that's self-explanatory, but the characters would be humans, and then they'll kind of shift into these abstract pieces or whatever, and then end up assembling into, if it's a building or a street or just whatever, something like that. So I really appreciated that. I liked, okay, so I'll say this. If you are subscribed to my Patreon, and if you're not, I'm going to tell you now, but I'm making a short film, and the short film is an animated documentary. So it was nice to see an animated documentary in this capacity, where that they had some other voices, Black voices of kids, unfortunately, telling their experiences or encounters with the police. And so it was just really inspiring for me in that regard. Visually, the film is pretty grayscale. It's black, white, and gray. There's no color, and they just navigate the different hues for their storytelling. And I thought that was dope too, just having like a muted visual palette. But because of the animation style, you didn't really feel like it was boring. It's really not in the same vein at all to like black and white cartoons from back in the day. If you're thinking Betty Boo and Popeye and Mickey Mouse and all that sort of stuff, it's not the same at all. Moving forward, and I decided to talk about these two one after another. I guess I tried to organize the short films in a way that like contextually. So we're kind of going from like heavy a little bit, and then we're going to lighten up the feels. So the next film is Cops and Robbers and is directed and co-written by Arnon, Manor, and Timothy Ware-Hill. You can watch this on Netflix. It's really short. I should have put the time frame. The New York Times one, The Torture Letters, that one's about 12 minutes. Cops and Robbers, I say, is about like 7 to 8 minutes long. And I should go back to say The Torture Letters, it's 3 letters that's told over the course of those 12 minutes. So you're getting kind of like 3 different stories. Cops and Robbers also has a poetic feel, well, because it actually is a poem, whereas the Torture Letters documentary is poetic, right? But Cops and Robbers is essentially like a poem. So for Cops and Robbers, like not to be too much of a spoiler, it's the narrator and he's walking kind of like down a street or whatever in the neighborhood. And as he's reciting this poem, it's cutting to different things that he mentions in the poem. So we see that. I just got a little stumped. This is what IMDB says about this. This animated short film is inspired by a spoken word poetry video created in response to the murder of Ahmaud Arbery. So this film for me definitely looks, and this is no shade, that it was created in a shorter time frame. And part of the reason why I say that to a certain extent is because it had so many different animation styles. If any of you are fans of Bob's Burgers has that one episode where they had like 12 different animation styles in like one episode. But the difference between that and this, one, is probably like money, right? 2, how much time they really gave to each animation style to hit that sort of like level of perfection. So by saying that, I'm not trying to say that Cops and Robbers is an imperfect film, but I think the time frame and like maybe if they had more time per animation style, it would look more polished. But given the nature of the subject, I kind of think that if something was so polished, it actually would have worked against the subject matter a bit. Like, did I just bring it home? That was a little rough, but I think I brought it home. So I think, again, that short film was worth mentioning. Subject matter, the visual animation style. So you're seeing also Black characters throughout the film, the short film, in different visual styles, which was cool. Like, I think they had like a stop motion kind of clay motion type of thing. They had like some 3D type of stuff. They had all sorts of kind of 2D animation and rotoscoping. It was like everything was in there. But also it didn't really feel like one was competing for more attention with another, which, that's respectable. Like I feel that. I'm not mad at that at all. So next, I have Substance by Jamaal Bradley, and that was released in 2019. This film you can watch on YouTube. The description based off YouTube says, based on true events, 2 brothers battle over the future of the family, but it will be a young girl who changes her father's substance and the fate of generations. This is 3D animation. This is, out of the films we talked about so far, this is the only one that doesn't have any dialogue. It's just straight. It probably had like a composer, and music and stuff like that. It's not any cheesy music or anything distracting or alarming. It is a heavy-ish, it is a heavy subject matter, but it's also like a real and authentic to what not a lot of people, I don't know. Now I'm rambling. The subject matter is a real and authentic experience to enough individuals, and that is of substance abuse. And that's what this short film is tackling. And I feel like this is worth mentioning because it is 3D animated, and we associate a lot of 3D animation with like happy, lighthearted subjects and topics because of Pixar and DreamWorks and all this sort of stuff. So to see characters that look like they could fit in those same worlds as like Up or whatever, but the context of what they're dealing with is substance abuse, I think is really impactful. And I will always want to see more stuff like that. Like like I've said before, I think in my Cops and Robots? Yeah, Love, Cops and Robots, whatever that anthology thing is, whatever episode that was in season 1 of the podcast, adult animation doesn't necessarily mean that there has to be explicit nudity and vulgar language and like violence and gore and stuff like that. It doesn't have to mean that. Adult animation can just mean the subject matters are heavier than they would be for children, you know? So that's it. Like, the animation style is dope. Like, if you want to, you should probably just look up Jamaal Bradley and things that he's done, and maybe you'll find some things that he's doing too. And he's super approachable on social media, but, you know, that's not to say that you just slide in his DMs or anything. Just tweet him or on the timeline or comment on his pictures. He's not gonna be shady or anything like that. Moving on, this is okay. So also, if you didn't know, this is kind of going to be a short episode because I'm talking about animated shorts. And even though I have 5, it's like I don't want to spoil it and give it away. So next we're coming to Canvas, which was released, just a couple months ago towards the end of 2020. Canvas is a short film that I did back on, I'm going to say Kickstarter. I think the next 2 films were both on Kickstarter. So I backed that. Frank, I met virtually electronically, digitally a couple years ago, working on Book of Mojo, which was a short teaser film thing that was in production, and I hope one day can come out because it was a really good premise. But you can watch Canvas on Netflix. It is about 9 minutes. IMDB says, after suffering a loss, a painter finds his inspiration to create again. This is a mainly 3D animated short film, but there are some moments that are 2D animated, and that's actually when the character is having some flashbacks of prior the loss that he experienced. Like Substance, there's no dialogue in this film. What I really liked about it, which I know Frank has gotten a lot of praise for, was for the hair. And he's posted and shared a lot of stuff about the making of Canvas. But I really like the hair treatment there's a young girl and there's, a woman, the girl's mother. They have that like kind of kinky, fluffy hair texture. And I just really appreciate that he went for that depiction because, he didn't have to, but he did. I mean, obviously, I just read it from IMDb. It's about grief and passions. And I thought that that's, we're starting to kind of pick up in a little bit. Like, even though there is that mention of grief, the painter returning to his passions was like, a nice pick me up. And it's just visually like a really, really good film. Like, the lighting in it for a short film looks really good. I don't remember how much money they got off of Kickstarter, but they got enough to make it really look like studio quality. Like you would have thought that this came out of like a Disney, Pixar, DreamWorks, Blue Sky, one of those studios. The last short film I'm going to talk briefly about is Hair Love. And doesn't it make sense? Hair Love was directed by Matthew Cherry, but I think it was also co-directed by Bruce Smith from the Proud Family and Everett Downing, who was the creator, director for Book of Mojo, where I met Frank. So it was really dope that the 3 of them came together and made this awesome thing. So Hair Love was a social media campaign. It was a Kickstarter. I did support it on Kickstarter. YouTube description says, Hair Love is an animated short film that tells the heartfelt story of an African-American father learning to do his daughter's hair for the first time. Matthew Cherry has done so many interviews, and he's talked about the inspiration for this short film was just seeing a whole bunch of Black men essentially on social media, if it's Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram, Facebook, all trying to do their daughter's hair and struggling and succeeding, and just kind of what that journey was like for them. So I did not type up my notes for this. So what I can say, I'm gonna actually get my notes. So what I can say for Hair Love is that there's very limited, if any, dialogue. I think the only dialogue really is Issa Rae's character basically having a little bit of a voiceover because the daughter is looking up YouTube videos. I really appreciated Hair Love for the depiction of the father. The father is clearly young. He looks like he's an older millennial. He has locks, right? He has tattoos. And for me, he's wearing slides. So I thought that was just dope. I feel like I don't want to explain what slides are. So the mom, she has natural hair. The daughter has natural hair. The mom also is darker than the dad and the child. So that was also dope too, just to see a little darker complexion representation in the animation medium. So that's the 5 short films. One thing I really wanted to mention is that as significant as these short films are, it is still a bit unfortunate that it's so hard to find animated shorts of this caliber directed by Black women. Now, there were Black women that were part of the production team for a couple of these short films. So for Canvas, I do know that one of the producers for that was Paige Johnstone, I should say that. For Hair Love, Karen Tolliver was a producer on that, and that's kind of what I know, but they're also producers, I really hope to be able to do this episode again in the future. I don't know how far in the future, and to have a list of 5 animated shorts that are directed by Black women. That would be so dope. So I actually too want to have a conversation with some of my, I guess, more senior Black folks in animation and just converse about why. For me, I kind of think, we've had this conversation on Twitter really and in some digital spaces over the summer with the Black Lives Matter movement, where a lot of us feel or believe that the reason why we don't see Black women in animation spaces in more higher up positions is just because of lack of opportunity, 1. And 2, a lot of Black women leave the animation industry. We're not able to advance and move up, and we face so many micro and macro racial aggressions that it's just I don't even want to be here. Clearly I'm not wanted, so I should leave. And as much as I think that sucks, I just wish that Black women didn't have such horrible experiences so that they can push through. And it does take us a really long time. I've been now in the industry for 5 years. End of this year will make 6 years. And I only just got promoted to a coordinator position, So that's really tough to just try and say I'm going to work in an industry for 5 years at an entry level position type of thing and just hope maybe one day I can move up. You have bills to pay. If you have a family, if you want to start a family, you don't really have time for that. And again, if you're facing these macro aggressions, why? You could just find something else to do. But I do believe it's those things. And I know sometimes we've talked in Black Women Animator over the summer, we had a Black Women with an X, WOMXN conversation, just talking about how we are navigating the space or have to navigate the space differently from our Black male peers. And to a certain extent, how it feels they pull each other up. And it feels, not to say that this is necessarily true at all, because it's not a blanket statement to be true. It appears as if they solely pull each other up and they don't really pull Black women up with them. And this is not to say that this is their responsibility to uplift Black women as they progress, but it just seems in all aspects of life, if Black women win, everybody wins. But the reverse is not true for Black women, and that kind of really sucks. So I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent here, but it's just to say that the animation or the Black woman's experience in animation isn't exclusive from Black women's experiences really in any other industry, in any other capacity. But let me bring it all back and bring up the mood a little bit, right? I say all that to say that these are 5 animated shorts directed by Black people that it maybe will be a 45 minutes. You can watch everything, right? We have Hair Love. I didn't say Hair Love is about 10 minutes. Let's take Canvas is 9 minutes. So basically 10 minutes. Substance is 8 minutes. So let's just call that 10 minutes. So that's already a half hour. So yeah, let's just say almost an hour. You can watch 5 animated shorts directed by Black people, and you're going to see Black representation in a variety of ways. And also you're going to see the animation medium in a variety of ways as well. So Links to everything's in the description. This was a short episode, but you know what that means. The next episode won't be short. I can say this freely because it's already pre-recorded. After this drops, you know, I'm going to start editing it. I actually did a live stream for this podcast recording, and that is with Ruel Smith. And he's a VFX supervisor, director, and he's actually pivoting to be a director. So stay tuned for that episode. It will come out in just a couple weeks after this one. And it's such a nice and fun conversation. And like I said, I live streamed it. So there's a little bit of user engagement that you will hear in it. And Ruel is just a really, really dope person that I'm fortunate enough to have connected with about 2+ years ago. When I started doing Diverse Tunes things. And it's been really great just learning about him and talking with him. And, you know, career pivots is something that a lot of us people are afraid to do. So anytime I interact with someone who just takes that leap, you know, I'm just happy for them. I think it's so dope. So I'm looking forward to sharing that conversation with you all. And if you were viewing the live stream, thank you for viewing. That's all. I got to wrap this up so I can edit it and get it out to you so you can watch it. Take care and, you know, find me around the interwebs everywhere at Simply Robotics, the website simplyrobotics.com, the Patreon where I'm vlogging now. And that's where I'm sharing my vlogs and my filmmaking journey and whatever. Bye.